The most dangerous lies are not the ones we tell with words, but the ones we tell with our skin, in the dark, when the world is too quiet to hide the truth. The air in the penthouse suite of the Shard didn't smell like London rain or exhaust. It smelled of beeswax, old paper, and the faint, intoxicating scent of Abdul's skin, a mix of expensive oud and something warmer, like baked earth and vanilla. The room was bathed in the low, golden glow of recessed floor lighting, turning the glass walls into mirrors against the night. Outside, the city was a sprawling nervous system of electricity, but inside, the infinite world had shrunk down to the size of the velvet sofa and the man standing over it. Abdul Okoro wasn't wearing the bespoke Savile Row armor he used to intimidate the board of directors. He was in linen trousers and a loose white shirt, unbuttoned enough to show the dark skin of his chest. He held 2 glasses of vintage Krug, the bubbles rising in perfect, disciplined lines. "To silence," Abdul said, his voice a deep, gravelly baritone that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. "The only luxury money can't actually buy." Minjai Park tucked her legs underneath her, the silk of her robe whispering against the charcoal velvet. She took the glass, her fingers brushing his. The static shock was visible, a tiny blue spark in the dim light. "And to us," she whispered, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. Abdul smiled. It wasn't his magazine smile, the charming, slightly arrogant grin of the tech king of Shoreditch that graced the covers of GQ and Wired. This was the smile he saved for Sunday mornings and Tuesday midnights. It was soft, defenseless, and utterly devastating. He sat down, the distance between them vanishing. He placed a hand on her knee, his thumb tracing the line of her calf. "You know, Min," he said softly, looking into the amber liquid of his glass, "everyone thinks tomorrow is about the IPO. They think releasing Project Ether is about the energy crisis, or the stock price, or my ego." He turned to her, his dark eyes searching hers. "But they're grim. The project, that's just the legacy. This is the summit, being here, with you. The rest is just noise involving lawyers." Minjai felt a physical pain in her chest, sharp and jagged, as if a rib had snapped inward. She took a long sip of champagne to drown the sudden vertigo. "Abdul," she started, her voice faltering. He cut her off gently, placing the glass on the marble coffee table and reaching into the pocket of his discarded jacket. "I'm serious," he said. "I've spent 10 years building fortresses, firewalls, encryption keys, NDAs thicker than the Bible. I built a castle so high no one could climb it. And then you just walked through the front door with a red pen and a sarcastic comment about my coding syntax, and you reorganized my entire life." He pulled his hand out. Minjai's heart stopped. "Please don't propose," she begged silently. "Please don't make this a tragedy." But it wasn't a ring box. It was a small matte black drive, heavy, industrial, cold. "The Ether core." "I have to fly to Zurich tonight," Abdul said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The European regulators are getting cold feet. I need to hold their hands before the press conference." He took her left hand and turned it palm up. He placed the heavy black rectangle in the center of her hand and curled her fingers over it. "This is the only hard copy of the stabilization algorithm," he said. "The ghost key. If this gets out, if Julian Vane or the Chinese government gets it, the grid collapses. The reactor becomes a bomb. It's not just money, Min, it's millions of lives." He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. "I don't trust the hotel safe. I don't trust customs. I trust you." The words hung in the air, heavy as smoke. "Keep it safe, Minjai. I'll be back Thursday morning. Then we launch, and after that, we disappear. I'm thinking Bali, or maybe Seoul, just you and me. No phones, no code." Minjai stared at his closed eyes, at the impossible trust written on his face. She felt the weight of the drive in her hand. It felt like a live coal burning through her skin. I will," she lied. Abdul kissed her. It was slow, deep, and terrifyingly sweet. When he pulled away, he looked like a man who had everything he ever wanted. "I have to go," he said reluctantly, checking his watch. Drivers downstairs, one last trip, love, then I'm all yours. He grabbed his jacket. He paused at the door, framed by the city lights. I love you, Min. The door clicked shut, the lock engaged. Minjai sat alone in the silent, beautiful room. The champagne was still bubbling. She looked down at her hand. The black drive sat there, an innocuous thing that held the power of the sun. She didn't cry. People like Minjai Park didn't cry when they had work to do. She had 40 minutes to get dressed, get across London, and sell the love of her life to his worst enemy. Chapter 2: The Mathematics of Despair. Desperation has a specific taste. It tastes like stale hospital coffee and the copper tang of blood in your mouth from biting your tongue to keep from screaming. The contrast between Abdul's penthouse and the clinic in Stepney Green was vivid enough to cause whiplash. The penthouse was gold and glass. The clinic was linoleum and fluorescent hum. Minjai walked past the reception desk without stopping. The night nurse knew her. Everyone knew the woman in the £2,000 trench coat who sat by bed 4 and watched her brother disintegrate. Junho was 22. He used to be a semi-pro footballer. He used to fill a doorway. Now he was a collection of sharp angles under a thin sheet, his skin the color of old parchment. Acute hepatic necrosis, autoimmune, fast, brutal. Minjai stood at the foot of the bed. The monitors beeped a slow, struggling rhythm. Nuna, Junho whispered, using the Korean honorific for older sister. His eyes were open, but they were yellowed and glassy. I'm here, Jun, she said, moving to his side. She smoothed his hair back. It was damp with sweat. Did you dominate the world today? He rasped, a ghost of his old cheekiness surfacing. Something like that, she said, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack her face. Abdul sends his best. He's flying to Zurich. He's a good man, Junho murmured, his eyes drifting shut. You're lucky. Yes, lucky. Minjai looked at the chart hanging at the foot of the bed. Palliative care only. The NHS had denied the third appeal. The transplant list was too long and his time was too short. The only hope was the Sterling Protocol, a synthetic enzyme treatment available only at a private clinic in Geneva, owned by Julian Vane, cost £4 million, cash, up front. Minjai had savings, she had stock options, but the options wouldn't vest until after the launch, and Junho didn't have days, let alone weeks. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from a blocked number. The Tate Turbine Hall, midnight, come alone. Minjai looked at her brother. He was drifting into the morphine sleep. If she did nothing, he would be dead by the weekend. If she did this, he would be on a plane to Geneva within the hour. She reached into her bag and touched the cold metal of the drive. It wasn't a choice, it was a transaction, a soul for a life. She leaned down and kissed Junho's forehead. I'm going to fix this, Jun, she whispered in Korean. I promise, whatever it takes. She stood up. The decision had been made days ago, but the reality of it was settling in now, suffocating and absolute. She was going to betray Abdul. She was going to destroy the man who loved her to save the boy who needed her. Chapter 3: The Devil Wears Bespoke. The Turbine Hall of the Tate Modern is a cathedral of industry, a vast, echoing void where footsteps sound like gunshots and secrets have nowhere to hide. At midnight, the museum was closed, a cavern of shadows and concrete. Minjai's heels clicked on the ramp, the sound echoing up into the darkness. At the far end, illuminated by a single security light, stood Julian Vane. He was the antithesis of Abdul. Where Abdul was warm, expansive, and emotional, Vane was cold, precise, and empty. He was a man who viewed people as lines of faulty code to be deleted or rewritten. Minjai, Vane said without turning around. He was staring at a piece of modern art that looked like a car crash frozen in time. Punctual, I value that in an asset. I'm not your asset, Minjai said, stopping 10 feet away. Let's get this over with. Vane turned, he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. So crisp, so professional, you really are wasted on Okoro. He treats business like a family gathering. It's pathetic. He treats people like human beings, Minjai snapped. And look where that got him, Vane gestured to her, betrayed by the love of his life in a drafty museum. Minjai stiffened. I'm not doing this for you, and I'm not doing it against him. This is a rescue mission. Semantics, Vane waved a hand dismissively. The motivation is irrelevant to the outcome. Do you have the product? He snapped his fingers. From the shadows, a bodyguard stepped forward, holding a thick envelope and a tablet. Transfer papers for the Geneva clinic, Vane said. The medical evacuation jet is fueled at City Airport. The moment I verify the drive, the call is made. Junho breathes Swiss air by morning. Minjai stared at the papers. It was life. It was Junho playing football again. And the money, she asked. Wired to an offshore account in the Caymans. Untraceable. You can disappear, start over, maybe buy a vineyard in Tuscany. You look like you need wine. Vane held out his hand, palm up, expectant. Minjai reached into her purse. Her fingers brushed the cold metal of the drive. For a second, she hesitated. She thought of the smell of gunpowder and vanilla. She thought of Abdul in the firelight saying, I trust you. If she gave this to Vane, Aetheris was finished. Vane would patent troll, bury the tech, or weaponize it. The clean energy dream would die. Abdul would be ruined. He would be investigated, perhaps prosecuted for negligence. She was destroying a good man to save the one she loved. But Junho is my blood. She pulled the drive out. The encryption key is alphanumeric, she said, her voice sounding hollow, like it was coming from a stranger. You need the physical drive and the biometric pass. I have the pass, Vane said smoothly. We have friends in your IT department. We just needed the ghost key. Minjai froze. You have a mole in it. My dear, I have moles everywhere. You're just the one with the crown jewels. He took the drive from her hand. The contact of his skin against hers made her want to retch. He pulled a small device from his coat, inserted the drive, and tapped the screen. A progress bar appeared. Green, verified. Vane smiled. It was a terrifying expression, pure, unadulterated gluttony. Beautiful, he whispered. Ether, the air the gods breathe, fitting. He tapped his earpiece. Make the call, transport the patient. He looked at Minjai. It's done. Your brother is on his way. You should probably go pack. The fallout from this is going to be nuclear. He turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the empty hall, leaving Minjai standing alone in the dark. She had done it. Junho was safe. So why did she feel like she had just died? Chapter 4, The Art of the Lie. Waiting for a bomb to go off is quiet work. It requires a stillness that feels like paralysis. Wednesday was a blur of nausea and fake smiles. Thursday was an eternity. Minjai didn't run. She didn't go to the Caymans. She went back to work. It was a form of self-punishment. She needed to be there when the world crumbled. She needed to look Abdul in the eye when she broke him. It was the only honor she had left. Abdul returned Thursday morning, 3 hours before the launch. He breezed into the office, bringing the energy of a storm front. They loved it, he announced, throwing his arms wide as he entered the executive suite. Zurich is on board. The EU is drafting contracts. We have the funding for the global rollout, Min. We did it. He grabbed her in a hug, lifting her off the ground. He smelled of airplane air, stale espresso, and that undeniable warmth. Minjai hung limp in his arms for a second before patting his back. She felt like a hollow shell. That's brilliant, Abdul, she stammered as he set her down. Where is it? He asked, eyes dancing with adrenaline. The magic key. I need to load the final sequence for the demo. This was it, the moment the lie became permanent. Minjai walked to her desk. She opened the drawer. Vane had returned the drive casing. He had wiped the data, copied it, and put a dummy code on it that would run the demo but fail the master authentication later. It was enough to fool Abdul for a few hours. She handed it to him. Abdul took it, weighing it in his hand. You kept it safe. Yes, she lied. It was the easiest lie she had told yet, because she had no truth left in her. Good girl, Abdul winked. He plugged it into his terminal. He typed rapidly, his long fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard. Minjai held her breath. She waited for the error message. She waited for him to shout. But Abdul just hummed to himself, nervously. Compiling, synchronizing, and done. He sat back, lacing his fingers behind his head. We are locked and loaded for the live stream at noon. He spun his Aeron chair around to face her. The joy on his face was slowly replaced by a look of concern. He studied her, his brow furrowing. Min, you look terrible. I haven't slept well. Is it Jun-ho? Minjai flinched as if he had slapped her. How did you? I know he's been sick. Min, I noticed the calls you were taking in the hallway. I saw the bills on your desk a few months ago. I tried to offer help. But you hid them. You're so bloody proud. He stood up and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the foggy London skyline. I know about the rejection letters from the NHS. I know about the experimental treatment in Geneva. Minjai's heart stopped. The blood drained from her face, leaving her cold. Abdul. I made some calls while I was in Zurich, Abdul said, his back to her. I have some friends at the university hospital there, not the private clinic Vane owns, the research wing, the better wing. He turned around, grinning like a schoolboy. I got him in, Min. I arranged the transport this morning. They were supposed to pick him up an hour ago. I paid for it, all of it, company expense. I categorized it under essential personnel wellness. The room spun. A high-pitched ringing filled Minjai's ears. You paid for it, she whispered. Of course I did, Abdul said, confused by her reaction. Your family. I was going to tell you as a surprise when I got back, but you looked so stressed. Minjai grabbed the edge of the desk to keep from falling. She had sold the company to save Jun-ho. And Abdul had saved Jun-ho for free. She had betrayed him for nothing. Min, are you okay? Abdul took a step toward her. She backed away. I have to go to the bathroom. She bolted. She ran out of his office, past the startled assistants, into the executive washroom. She locked the door and slid down against it, burying her face in her hands. She sobbed, great, heaving, ugly sobs that tore at her throat. She had given Vane the code. It was done. She couldn't undo it. Vane had the leverage. At noon, during the launch, he would strike. He would destroy Abdul. And Abdul had just saved her brother's life. Her phone vibrated against the tile floor. It was Vane, a text. Tech verify complete. Launch sequence initiated on our end. Checkmate in 10 minutes. Minjai stared at the screen. She had to tell him. She had to go back in there and tell Abdul everything. Maybe he could stop it. Maybe he could build a patch. She stood up, splashed cold water on her face, and stared at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were red, her skin pale. She looked like a ghost. You are the virus, she told her reflection. She unlocked the door and walked back out into the hallway. Abdul was standing by the elevator, talking to the head of security. When he saw her, he waved. Min, come here, we have a situation. Minjai froze. He knows. She walked toward him, her legs feeling like lead. What is it? Security picked up a weird transmission leaving the subnet 2 nights ago, Abdul said, frowning. Packet bursts. Encrypted. Someone punched a hole in the firewall. He looked at her, his eyes searching. It originated from an authorized login, an executive login. Minjai's heart hammered against her ribs. Oh. Yeah, Abdul sighed, rubbing his temples. We think it was Marcus, the VP of marketing. We found an offshore transfer in his name today. I just fired him. Minjai blinked. Marcus, the marketing VP. Yeah, he's being escorted out now. Can you believe it? He sold our client list to a competitor. Small potatoes, but still. Betrayal stings, doesn't it? Abdul clapped a hand on her shoulder. Thank God I can trust you, eh? He smiled, a genuine, warm, heartbreaking smile. Come on, let's go. The live stream starts in 5 minutes. Minjai looked at the elevator doors sliding open. She looked at Abdul, the man who had saved her brother, the man who thought the only leak was a client list. She realized then that the tragedy wasn't just the betrayal, it was the timing. Vane wasn't going to use the client list. He was going to use the core, and when he did, Abdul wouldn't just be blindsided, he would be destroyed by the very person standing at his right hand. Right, Minjai said, forcing her mouth to move. Let's go. She stepped into the elevator with him. The doors closed, sealing them in a steel box, shooting them upward toward the light. Chapter 5, The Glass House Shatters. The end of the world doesn't sound like a bang. It sounds like the silence of a room full of people realizing they have lost everything. The auditorium was packed. Journalists, investors, tech giants. The cameras were rolling. Abdul stood at the podium. He looked magnificent. He spoke about the future, about a world without scarcity, about hope. Minjai stood in the wings, just off stage. She was shaking. And now, Abdul said, his voice booming, I give you the Ether network. He pressed the button to activate the screen behind him. It was supposed to show the live feed from the reactor. Instead, the screen flickered, static. Then a logo appeared, sharp, angular, predatory. Obsidian, CORP. The crowd murmured. Abdul frowned, tapping the console. Technical glitch, one moment. Then the audio cut in. It was Abdul's voice. It was Julian Vane. Ladies and gentlemen, the voice boomed over the speakers. Forgive the interruption, but I felt it necessary to correct a theft. Abdul froze. The screen changed to a live feed of Julian Vane sitting in his own boardroom. The technology you are seeing today, Vane said smoothly, is not the Ether network. It is the Onyx protocol, developed by Obsidian Corp and stolen by Etheris employees. He's lying, Abdul shouted into the mic. Cut the feed. Am I? Vane laughed. I have the source code. I have the patent filings dated 3 days ago, and I have the authentication logs. On the giant screen, a document appeared. It was a transfer log. Authorized transfer, system core. User M. Park. Timestamp Tuesday 00:15 a.m. The room went deadly silent. Abdul stared at the screen. He stared at the name, M. Park. He turned slowly. He looked into the wings. Minjai stepped out of the shadows. She couldn't hide. There was nowhere to go. Abdul looked at her. He didn't look angry. He looked confused. He looked like a child who had just been struck by a parent. He looked down at his phone, which Minjai knew contained the confirmation that he had just paid £5 million to save her brother. Then he looked back at her. The realization washed over him. He connected the dots, the late nights, the stress, the drive he gave her. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Minjai stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Abdul, we are releasing the code open source. Vane continued on the screen, delivering the death blow. Free energy for everyone. Etheris is finished. But Abdul wasn't listening to Vane. He was looking at Minjai. And in his eyes, Minjai saw something worse than hate. She saw the death of the man who had loved her. The glass fortress had fallen, and she was the one who had thrown the stone.